Americans.
You might be wondering, why in the world is there a 30-minute countdown before the show starts? Well, we actually start live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, so this whole 30-minute countdown is a chance for YouTube and Rumble to send out their alerts and notifications, so we encourage you to gather up and hang out with everyone in the chat room. So every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time is when we do this show live. You can join us for the countdown if you like, or just set your clock and reminder that at 4 p.m. Eastern is when we go live. You can also make sure you subscribe and turn on that bell notification, so hopefully you will get a notification.
What do you have to say about dictators of countries like Indonesia, who we sell weapons to, yet they are slaughtering people in East Timor? What do you have to say about Israel, who is slaughtering Palestinians, who impose martial law? What do you have to say about that? Those are our allies. Why do we sell weapons to these countries? Why do we support them? Why do we bomb Iraq when it commits similar problems?
There are various examples of things that are not right in this world, and the United States is trying. I really am surprised that people feel that it is necessary to defend the rights of Saddam Hussein, when what we ought to be thinking about is how to make sure that he does not use weapons of mass destruction.
I'd like to...
Who are shouting? Just a moment.
I'm not defending him in the least. What I am saying is that there needs to be consistent application of U.S. foreign policy. We cannot support people who are committing the same violations because they are political allies. That is not acceptable. We cannot violate UN resolutions when it is convenient to us. You're not answering my question, Madam Albright.
You briefed the press, did you not, when you were there?
Well, I had several jobs. One of my jobs was that of analyst. I also was an interrogator and indeed briefed the press when we, the CIA, wanted to circulate disinformation on a particular issue. Disinformation is not necessarily a lie. It may be a half-truth. And we would pick out a journalist. I would go do the briefing and hope that he would put the information in print.
What was your percentage of success?
We were pretty successful in planning information of a rather rarefied nature. For instance, if we wanted to get across to the American public that the North Vietnamese were building up their force structure in South Vietnam, I would go to a journalist and advise him that in the past 6 months, X number of North Vietnamese forces had come down the Ho Chi Minh Trail system through southern Laos. Now, there is no way a journalist can check that information. That's data derived from radio intercepts, spy in the sky photography. So either he goes with the information or he doesn't, and ordinarily or usually the journalist would go with it because it looked like some kind of exclusive. Go after these gentlemen. I would be directed to cultivate them, to spend time with them at the Caravel Hotel or the Continental Hotel, to socialize with them, and slowly but surely to try to gain their confidence by dolloping out valid information which was true. And then I would drop into a conversation the data that we wanted to get across which might not be true. One piece of data, for instance, that we managed to plant in the New Yorker magazine had to do with a supposed North Vietnamese effort in 1973 to develop airfields along the border of South Vietnam. The reason we wanted to plant this information was that we were trying to persuade the U.S. Congress that Saigon should continue to get a great deal of aid, and that the North Vietnamese were the chief violators of the ceasefire accord. That was printed in the New Yorker magazine under the byline of Robert Chaplin, as indeed was a great deal of such information which we tried to circulate.
Frank, a two-part question. What were the objectives of or what was the objective of the CIA? What about the moral implications of what you were doing in feeding disinformation? Did the objective override the moral implications, moral problems?
Well, the objective of the agency in general is to generate intelligence and get it back to Washington, to get at the truth and make sure the policymakers understand it. When you plant disinformation, you are diverging from that objective, and I think probably in retrospect it was very counterproductive. I am, as an ex-CIA agent, opposed to the disinformation activities in which I was involved. I admit that I was involved, and I think it served no useful purpose. Propagandizing the American public or Congress is not the CIA's job. As to the morality of what the CIA was doing or that particular activity, the war was a very relative thing. It was a relativist environment, and morality seldom came into play when you were operating in the field. In my estimation, a CIA man should be amoral. That may sound pretty shocking to somebody, but what if my morality were that of a Nazi agent, if you will? You wouldn't want me to be your intelligence officer. Keep the morals out of intelligence. Keep the truth in, and stay away from disinformation.
It would have been more appropriate for Mr. Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, to address this House according to Article 144, an article which was specifically designed to debate violations of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law, which is clearly the case with Mr. Trudeau. Then again, a Prime Minister who openly admires the Chinese basic dictatorship, who tramples on fundamental rights by persecuting and criminalizing his own citizens as terrorists just because they dared to stand up to his perverted concept of democracy, should not be allowed to speak in this House at all. Mr. Trudeau, you are a disgrace for any democracy. Please spare us your presence. Thank you.
Colleagues, but the answer to war is not more war, it's peace. And peace isn't delivered by the barrel of a gun, it's delivered by diplomacy, by dialogue. You can wish away your continent's history, but we share a continent with Russia. We will sit down with Russia. There will be a negotiated peace, and this organization should be promoting it earlier rather than delaying it and making sure that more Ukrainians die. Your feigning of sympathy rings hollow. It makes me sick, to be honest with you.
we become involved when disinformation poses a threat to the security of our country. It is when there's a connectivity to a threat to our country. It could be a threat, a connectivity to violence. And what this working group does, is precisely what I would think you would want it to do, which is to take a look at the work, the disinformation work that our department has done and ask the following questions. Do we have policies? Do we have guardrails? Do we have standards?
But here's the
to
problem.
ensure-
We can't even agree. We can't even
extremely-
agree what disinformation is. You can't even agree that it was disinformation, that the Russians fed information to the Steele dossiers. You can't agree to that. How are we ever going to come to an agreement on what is disinformation so you can police it on social media?
Senator, I have 2 points, if I may finish. Number one, that what this office, what this working group does, because it's not an office, what this working group does is ensure that there are guardrails, definitions, standards to make sure that the free speech rights, the civil rights, civil liberties, and privacy rights of individuals
So
are
do you
not
think
impinged.
do you think
Number
COVID
one.
do you think
And
COVID
number
do you think
two,
COVID
if I may.
do you think COVID disinformation threatens our national security?
And number two, if I may, Senator, and number two, is it your proposition that when the cartels spread disinformation with respect to our immigration policies to try to lure vulnerable migrants to our border illegally?
I think you've got no idea what disinformation is, and I don't think the government's capable of it. Do you know who the greatest propagator of disinformation in the history of the world is? The U.S. government. Are you familiar with McNamara, the Pentagon Papers? Are you familiar with George W. Bush and the weapons of mass destruction? Are you familiar with Iran-Contra? I mean, think of all the debates and disputes we've had over the last 50 years in our country. We work them out by debating them. We don't work them out by the government being the arbiter. I don't want you guardrails. I want you to have nothing to do with speech. You think we can't determine, speech by traffickers is disinformation? You think the American people are so stupid they need you to tell them what the truth is? You can't even admit what the truth is with the Steele dossier. I don't trust government to figure out what the truth is. Government is largely disseminating disinformation.
Hey everyone, just as a reminder, our show starts at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, just a few minutes from now, but I should remind you that we have a daily newsletter. It's totally free. Natalie and I work very hard on it every morning over a cup of coffee, putting the stories together that we think are important that the mainstream media is going to ignore. All you need to do is go to our website. It's just redacted.inc. Put in your email address. We won't ever sell your email to anybody. And then you'll receive a welcome email. And all you need to do is verify that email, and 7 a.m. Eastern Time is when we send out our daily newsletter. And it's about 5 or 10 minutes in length that you can read it over your cup of coffee. And like I said, we cover 4 or 5 of the big stories of the day, plus a couple of things you might have missed while you were sleeping. We try to have some fun with it, add a little humor into it. And again, it's a great way to start off your morning. But it's also a great way for us to stay connected with you as well, because we've been banned and blocked on some of these platforms before, where we haven't been allowed to post anything, not even a community post. So the only way for us to stay connected with you is through our newsletter. We were able to send out a newsletter and say, hey everyone, we're blocked for the next week, and let you know what was actually going on with our show. Anyway, go to redacted.inc and sign up for the free newsletter, and it'll be posted first thing in the morning over your cup of coffee.
This is a bit of an aside, but in terms of how you think about problem sets, when I was a cadet, what's the cadet motto at West Point? You will not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire We had entire training courses.
We had a good discussion on ensuring global energy security and adequate oil supplies to support global economic growth, and that will begin shortly. I'm doing all I can to increase the supply for the United States of America, which I expect to happen. The Saudis share that urgency, and based on our discussions today, I expect we'll see further steps in the coming weeks.
Are you worried about it?
One of the hopeful things that I've discovered is that nearly every war that has started in the past 50 years has been a result of media lies. The media could have stopped it if they had searched deep enough. If they hadn't reprinted government propaganda, they could have stopped it. But what does that mean? Well, that means basically populations don't like wars. And populations have to be fooled into wars. Populations don't willingly and with open eyes go into a war. So if we have a good media environment, then we'll also have a peaceful environment.
Killed a million people in Iraq.
That is a separate...
You killed a million people in Iraq. It's incredible that you have the brass neck to be sitting here now urging another Iraq war.
George,
after
if
what
I
you've
was
already
still in
done.
Parliament, I...
There can be no doubt that Saddam Hussein has biological weapons and the capability to rapidly produce more, many more. And he has the ability to dispense these lethal poisons and diseases in ways that can cause massive death and destruction. If biological weapons seem too terrible to contemplate, chemical weapons are equally chilling. UNMOVIC already laid out much of this, and it is documented for all of us to read in UNSCOM's 1999 report on the subject. If we consider just one category of missing weaponry, 6,500 bombs from the Iran-Iraq war, UNMOVIC says the amount of chemical agent in them would be in the order of 1,000 tons. These quantities of chemical weapons are now unaccounted for. Dr. Blick says, quipped that, quote, mustard gas is not marmalade. You are supposed to know what you did with it. We believe Saddam Hussein knows what he did with it, and he has not come clean to the international community. We have evidence these weapons existed. What we don't have is evidence from Iraq that they have been destroyed or where they are. That is what we are still waiting for.
Okay, inspection worth doing, everybody's agreed it's worth doing, and it gets stopped. Yes, sir. At that moment, we're an automatic pilot as far as you're concerned. Period. No ifs, ands, or buts. Now, I respect that. But now, it seems to me the Secretary of State might have a slightly different problem. Secretary of State might be sitting there and saying, now look over there on that side. Now, I remember so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, and the 12 people on this side, they're all the ones that said they didn't want to use force. Now, I'm going to have to go tell the President now that we should, or Secretary Cohen, unleash whatever it takes to get it done. And our military assessment is the same as the Major's. The Major's assessment is, privately held but publicly acknowledged later, that airstrikes alone aren't going to do this. Saddam's not going to cave on this. So, now here's the deal. I recommended the President have at it and let the chips fall where they may. A reasonable position for the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State to take. But I respectfully suggest, Major, I respectfully suggest they have a responsibility slightly above your pay grade. Slightly above your pay grade. To decide whether or not to take the nation to war alone. Or to take the nation to war partway. Or to take the nation to war halfway. That's a real tough decision. That's why they get paid the big bucks. That's why they get the limos and you don't. I mean this sincerely. I'm not trying to be flip. Because I think, and that's why I said at the outset, the reason why I'm glad you did what you did, we should come to our milk. We should make a decision. But in terms of whether the Secretary of State has no more to consider than you do as the arms inspector. You didn't get in, didn't get my job done, get me in. Period. You made the deal, right? That's the deal. A deal's a deal. Get me in. Scott Ritter, I'm ready to go. It's not how it works. Now, maybe it should work that way. But wouldn't you acknowledge that if you were President of the United States or the Secretary of State, you'd sit there and say, now, okay, old Scotty boy didn't get in. We said he should get in. We want him to get in. It's important that he does get in. They're not going to let him in, so what are we going to do now? We know that France and Russia aren't going to be with us. We're quite confident China's not. We've already run those traps. They're not there. We're not sure where the United States Senate is, but have at it, boys. Go get them. And by the way, Scott and the boys say air power's not enough. I think it's a legitimate debate, Scott, Major. I think it's a legitimate debate. But I don't think we should be putting it in the context of you have somebody up there at state saying, look, how can we weasel out of this agreement? We want to let this guy out there hanging. We're not this. It's a very practical political decision. Same kind of decision General Powell made. Same kind of decision President Bush made. Every president, every Secretary of State has to do it. Like I said, they get paid more than you. Their job's a hell of a lot more complicated than yours. They may have made the wrong decision, and you brought it to light. We should address it. We should say straight up where we are, and we should do it. And for that, I thank you. But it's above your pay grade.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon, and one of the generals called me and he said, sir, you got to come in and talk to me a sec. He says, we've made the decision we're going to war with Iraq. I said, we're going to war with Iraq? Why? He said, I don't know. He said, I guess they don't know what else to do. He said, I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we got a good military and we can take down governments. And he said, I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail. So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, are we still going to war with Iraq? And he said, oh, it's worse than that. He reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper. He said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
Hey everyone, Clayton here. The show is going to start at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I should remind you that we have a VIP community. It's our Redacted Rebel VIP community. Now, this show is totally free, what you're watching right now, right? You can subscribe here on YouTube and Rumble, totally free. But if you'd like to support independent journalism, we are run by you. Without you guys, we wouldn't be able to do this show. We wouldn't be able to hire the team that we have. We wouldn't be able to afford the servers that we have. We wouldn't be able to afford the reporters that we have, the team that we have. So you can support us by going to redacted.inc, and on the right side of your screen, you'll see a VIP community button. Just click that, and for the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can support us. We put out exclusive content, early interviews that no one else will see, live streams just for our VIP Rebel community. So again, it's totally free to watch this show. But if you do want to support independent journalism, we would really appreciate it. Come on over to redacted.inc, click on that community button, and decide if you want to sign up or not. It's totally up to you. We thank you. And meanwhile, the show will start in just a few moments at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Whatever our hopes may be for the future, for reducing this threat or living with it, there is no escaping either the gravity or the totality of its challenge to our survival and to our security. A challenge that confronts us in unaccustomed ways in every sphere of human activity. This deadly challenge imposes upon our society two requirements of direct concern, both to the press and to the President. Two requirements that may seem almost contradictory in tone, but which must be reconciled and fulfilled if we are to meet this national peril. I refer first to the need for far greater public information, and second, to the need for far greater official secrecy. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
Hey, everybody. Welcome into Redacted on this Tuesday. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natalie Morris.
So glad to have you here, and great to see you guys. Let us know where you're joining us from around the world. Post it in the chat, whether it's on Rumble, on YouTube. Thanks to all of our subscribers, wherever you are. We really appreciate it. Hey, we've got a busy show for you on this Monday because we have an ex-CIA officer on the show to analyze some specific new documents which have surfaced from a purported U.S. Secret Service agent who claims that his office is being tasked with removing Zelensky from Ukraine, moving him to the United States. We're going to go through this story and whether or not this is credible, first of all, but also more largely what is happening in Ukraine and for Zelensky's future anyway. There's been a number of sources, of course, who are pointing to his demise very, very soon. So we will talk about that.
Plus, the New York Times lets the worst-kept secret in Washington out of the bag that Israel has nuclear weapons. They did this based on some satellite images. This is something the U.S. government and officials in Washington have been pretending not to know for decades, but now they can pretend no longer because the New York Times decided to stop pretending. Why did they do that? I wonder. We're going to go through a couple of other things that they pretend not to know about Israel as we, pretend that this is a friendship that we can control. It's a ridiculous narrative.
Right. We're also going to look at men of military age. Many of you have been wondering, we've been asking this question for the past year or more than a year. Why in the world are men of military age coming across the United States border, the southern border, and many of them from China? And, people can deny it all they want, say that's a conspiracy theory. But of course, the videos are piling up. The evidence is piled up. And we are wondering now why exactly this is happening, right? Like, what is the purpose of being handed ID cards and money by the U.S. government? You don't have a family. You don't have children. You don't have women with you. What is going on here? Well, we now have direct confirmation from the United States Senate as to exactly the intention behind why these men of military age are coming into the United States. We'll talk about that and so much more as Redacted starts right now.
All right. Well, Clayton's wearing his Redacted merchandise. We had actually quite a few orders come in on the Redacted store. You can check it out for yourself because it's the gift giving season, this would be an appropriate gift under the tree.
Also, we added it now to the bottom of our YouTube channel. So it's now built in to the bottom of our YouTube channel. So you might even notice it if you're on our homepage now. It's finally integrated, thankfully. They used to only have it with like YouTube's back end where like YouTube would get like 30% or something ridiculous. And now I think enough creators were like, that's bullshit. Like, allow us to put our own store and not you take 30% of it, because you take 30% of everything. So now redactedstore.com is built in, but you can go there and pick up any of your merch and all of that kind of good stuff. Mugs, t-shirts, stickers, hoodies, all of that stuff. Our Friends Don't Let Friends Watch the Mainstream Media bumper stickers. Put that on the car. The I Will Not Comply hoodie. Walk around your town in that. Your rebel flag, your Redacted rebel flag, and so much more. So just go to redactedstore.com and well, just go to redactedstore.com. That's the place to go to check out all of your merch, right? Redactedstore.com.
Indeed. I also would like to tell you about our Redacted newsletter as well, because that's a place where you can get links to all the things we're going to talk about on the show so that you can read up on what it is we're going to talk about and form your own opinion and, you know, talk to us about how you feel, talk to us about maybe where you agree or don't agree. It's the Redacted newsletter is a daily compendium of the stories we cover here, plus a lot more. Some of them a little bit more fun, some of them talking pieces, links to things that we think you might be interested in, news by the numbers, things that are trending. It is totally free. You just go to redacted.inc. There's no part of the Redacted newsletter that is an upsell or behind a paywall, unless we've linked to something that is behind a paywall.
Like if we link to like a Wall Street Journal article
or a Financial Times article, then that's not, you know, I try not to do that a whole lot, but we do pay for a lot of different services. And sometimes I feel like, well, maybe our readers will be able to get a free few of these, whatever. But nothing from us is behind a paywall. It's totally free. So go to the Redacted newsletter, sign up for that, and then join us on the show. That should be your schedule. I'm not telling you what to do, but I'm asking you. Read the newsletter in the morning, join the show in the afternoon at redacted.inc.
And before we move on real quick, someone was asking in the chat here, can you get Redacted merch all over the world? Yes, you can get it in the EU, you can get it in Europe, you can get it anywhere to get any Redacted store merch. It's the global store is redactedstore.com. So yeah, check it out globally if you'd like. We've added the full international. I saw a couple of big orders come in today from the UK and the Netherlands and Germany and a bunch from California. So, hey, keep it real out in California and shove it. Wear that stuff in California. I love it. Redactedstore.com. Is Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky about to become a U.S. citizen and be shipped off to live in the sunny state of Florida? Well, a new report has surfaced from someone claiming to be a U.S. Secret Service agent. And according to the report, well, ostensibly this person is a whistleblower still working at the U.S. Secret Service, trying to remain anonymous. He says he has documents claiming that the U.S. has already negotiated a plan to remove Zelensky from power, bring him to the United States as a U.S. citizen. And here you can see these naturalization documents, which have been provided, which he apparently leaked to the media. And you can see Volodymyr Zelensky here on this U.S. naturalization document. And he also then published a YouTube video anonymously backing up these claims. Listen.
I work at the United States Secret Service, Office of Protective Operations. I have information which I believe needs to be made public. In mid-November, our office was tasked with planning and preparation for an operation to ensure the protection of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and his family. The Biden administration is making active preparations based on the idea that first, Zelensky won't be the president of Ukraine after next spring, and second, that he and his family will need long-term or permanent security inside the United States. The Biden administration is planning to allocate an incredible amount of money and resources for this operation. Zelensky is not just being given a couple of security agents, he will be given full Secret Service protection. The service has to provide him with a house, security, transport, and even a personal servant.
So is there any truth to these claims? Well, Larry Johnson is a former CIA agent, and he was the very first person, by the way, to report that Zelensky soon would be removed from power. He was the first person ringing the alarm bell saying Zelensky is in trouble. And this was months ago. And now we have this report. So we thought, who better to ask than Larry himself? Larry, welcome back to the show. Good to see you.
Hi, Clayton.
So what do you make of this report? Of course, you were out there at the very beginning of this saying that your intelligence sources were saying that Zelensky was in trouble. Now we have this naturalization documents. What do you make, first of all, of the documents?
Well, the documents appear legit. Now, in this day and age with all the computerized information, it's easy to fabricate and replicate legitimate documents. So the one thing I do notice on it, he has not signed it. So this is not necessarily a done deal. I was struck by the fact that when you read it, it was supposedly issued out of Tampa, Florida, which is on the west coast of Florida. But he's listing his residence as Vero Beach. And Vero is on the east coast of Florida. It's exactly from Tampa, it's about a 3.5-hour drive. I know because I've made it a couple of times. So I don't know why they wouldn't have gone down. You know, if you're in Vero Beach, it's easier to go to either Jacksonville or West Palm or Miami. So it's just sort of odd. You know, it's odd that they'd choose Tampa as sort of the Homeland Security destination.
And do we think that this is something that he did? Like any other American would roll down to a local bureaucratic office and like go into the post office or the DMV? Someone did this on his behalf, clearly, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no. So I'm sure in the discussions, we've got various visits, whether it's with Bill Burns, the CIA director, or Lloyd Austin, or Anthony Blinken. At some point in one of those conversations, I'm sure that Zelensky has asked for a guarantee. He wants something more than just a promise that the United States will have his back, because I think he's got at least enough understanding of history to recognize how many times the United States has allied itself with people and then betrayed them. And just ask Saddam Hussein. We can show pictures of him with Don Rumsfeld glad-handing in tuxedos. And next thing you know, Rumsfeld is having him rounded up and hung. So, I think Zelensky wants more than just a pat on the back and an assurance we'll take care of you when the time comes. I think, so that very well could be that that's what triggered this particular thing. But Zelensky's in, the trouble he's facing right now is that he's up against General Zelensky. And when it comes to the possibility of a power struggle, I always bet on the guns. Zelensky's got the guns. Zelensky doesn't.
And it seems that Zelensky, in addition to the guns, has at least the support of the military in part. We have videos over the past few weeks showing Ukrainian soldiers putting up pictures of Zelensky's face on a target practice board and shooting at Zelensky. Not pictures of Putin, pictures of their own president.
No, not a good sign. When your soldiers who you're supposed to be the commander of are using you for target practice, albeit as a proxy, it still sort of lets you know where the sentiment of the troops are. And, there is no good news for Ukraine on any part of the battlefield. And that's, Russia's campaign to grind them down is, some have hoped that, Russia would grow weary of this, or that it's somehow Russia is becoming dissatisfied with its progress. I don't think that's the case at all. In fact, what I've picked up, I'm actually in Moscow right now, and in discussions with some people, it's clear that the public sentiment is growing more strident against, before they would have accepted limited outcomes in Ukraine. It's okay, we'll just keep part of the Donbass. No, at this point, I think there is growing public support that they take all of Ukraine. They want to be done with this because of they've recognized within the West a betrayal, the West supporting neo-Nazis, where they thought that they had eliminated this whole Nazi threat at the end of World War II, and lo and behold, it's back. And what's really fascinating about Russia right now is the religious revival that has awakened in this country. It is massive, it is significant, and it is not a superficial thing. It is a deep-seated belief in the Eastern Orthodox Christian Church, really that traces its origins to Christianity, the very beginnings of Christianity. So that's one of the things the West doesn't understand. And that is a key factor in this battle with Ukraine, because the Ukrainians are seen as embracing Satanism, as embracing homosexuality, as embracing a variety of deviant lifestyles that the Russians themselves reject, and reject, vehemently. That they embrace, let's call them traditional Christian values, because that's exactly what they are.
Well, Russia recently banned transgender, I don't know, a whole host of transgender-related items in the country.
What they've done is they said that they're not going to allow organized LGBTQ groups to come out, protest, and be, have a public presence. But they've said that if you are homosexual, and what you do in the privacy of your bedroom is your business, not theirs, but do not bring it into public as a public policy issue, because it will be considered illegal. And, candidly, that's one of the things that's driving hatred in the West towards Russia, because the West's almost obsession with the whole rainbow flag movement is something that, Russia's saying, no, we're not going that way. We promote traditional heterosexual relationships, the good old-fashioned mom and dad and kids. That's where they are. And the West really makes a mistake if they fail to understand and appreciate that that's what's happening right now in Russia.
Interesting. Before I get you out of here, Larry, I want to kind of circle back just on this Secret Service agent, this purported Secret Service agent who is, leaking this information about these Zelensky documents. What do you make of that? The fact that a U.S. Secret Service agent would have access to these documents and is kind of blowing the whistle on this. Why the Secret Service?
Well, from time to time, Secret Service could be called in to consult on dignitary security, because that's their expertise. But I do know for a fact that Zelensky's security detail is really comprised of British Special Air Service, SAS. So it would be a little odd that it's not like the Secret Service has a detail in Ukraine to work with Zelensky and his crew. I guess that's the only thing I find a little suspicious about it. I would have, if there was a whistleblower, it would have come out of Homeland Security. But, it's not to say that it's not impossible. But the key will be to watch what happens in Ukraine, and particularly in Kiev, over the next couple of days, because the things are really starting to come to a boil. The former President Poroshenko was scheduled. He'd actually got approval from their Congress to leave Ukraine to go on a tour and a trip to try to drum up more support for Ukraine. And someone leaked a phone call, whether it's a legitimate call or it's a contrived call, where he was supposedly plotting with Viktor Orban of Hungary to get rid of Zelensky. Zelensky prevented Poroshenko from leaving the country. He created a bit of an uproar there. So, with each passing day, Zelensky imposes the kinds of controls on people in Ukraine that we used to associate with the old Soviet Union. So there's nothing democratic about it. They're cracking down on churches and on press freedom and on political parties.
Well, I do find it very interesting that as you and I are talking this afternoon or this evening, Ruslan Stefanchuk, who is the second in command in the ascension to the presidency behind Zelensky, is in Washington today, flew to the Capitol to meet with senators, not Zelensky. He went instead in his place and is meeting with members of Congress, the second in the line to the presidency. And apparently Zelensky's going to do a Zoom call or whatever. But I find it very interesting that he's not going and the second in command is now in Washington asking for money.
Yeah, well, that's another sign that Zelensky doesn't feel secure that if he leaves Kiev, that he would be vulnerable and could be easily replaced. Now, the West may be already going to do that for him. There is no path forward for Ukraine. That's what people in the West need to understand. It's not a matter of coming up with a new package of financial aid or a new set of military equipment. Nothing is going to change the trajectory of what is taking place in Ukraine right now, which is a Russian victory. And Russia has not been, despite the weather, despite the pretty inclement weather with snow and ice, the Russians continue to advance. And the Ukrainians are being forced to cede territory each passing day.
Interesting. Larry, we always appreciate your insights. Thank you so much for this. We just want to get your take on these naturalization documents. And is Zelensky going to be living out his days in Vero Beach, Florida in a $20 million mansion? We'll see. I guess the next few days, next few weeks are going to be very, very interesting. Larry, thanks so much for your insight on this. As always, great to see you.
Thanks, Clayton. Thank you.
Thanks, Larry. And a lot of people in the chat are saying there's no way that he's not moving to the United States. We would never allow that to happen. Okay. I'd like to believe that.
Stranger things have happened.
I would love to believe that.
I mean, in the UK, there's I can't remember now which South American president lived there while awaiting extradition charges. Yeah. We've had President Lula, who was in Florida for a while awaiting extrdition charges.
Our correspondent Dan Cohen confronted the former Colombian president, who, literally stole people's money and was, and worse, right? And walking on the streets of Washington, D.C. The stranger things, and they're living in the United States.
I guess if not here, there's always Argentina? Isn't that where? Yeah, that's where World War II, Canada. A bunch of people went.
That's where Hitler went. How many people from the Third Reich went to Argentina, for crying out loud?
Not everybody believes that Hitler went to Argentina, but Clayton and I watched. What was the name of that series?
You've never seen Hunting Hitler on the History Channel?
It's very convincing. Oh yeah.
But even there's many great books written about how the Third Reich, of course, continued on in Argentina. Look at Misiones, the town of Misiones in Argentina. The ex-CIA officers who tracked all of these people down and found them living in full-on Third Reich villages built in Argentina. Nevertheless,
we also recently found out that there's a lot of them that moved to Canada, and one was just celebrated in Canada.
Yes. So Zelensky might want to go there. That might be a good.
Actually, that's a great idea. Send Zelensky to Canada, because there they have, Parliament gets up and does standing ovations for Nazis. So they'd probably be very welcome there.
Yeah, to anyone.
And we know that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We know that Trudeau loves him. Hello, Vladimir.
Right. Yeah. That was pretty good. Pretty good, David. All right. Well, we have more news to get to. We're going to talk about how the New York Times dropped the worst kept secret in Washington, that Israel has nuclear weapons. Are we uncomfortable with that, given the fact that the world keeps telling Israel, tone it down on the civilian deaths? And they're like, we got it, right? Also, we got nukes. How do we feel about that? We're going to talk about this in a way that, and if you come at me with any anti-Semitism because of this worry about nukes and civilian deaths, I'm not having that. So I will not pick up that steaming pile of crap on the floor. So you can just keep it for yourself. We're also going to talk about men of military age flooding the United States. Where are all the women? What is the use for them? Congress has admitted we can put them in the military. So yeah, come on over. You don't need to be legal. You can die for us, and then you'll get a passport. How about that? Posthumous passport, I suppose, is how that works. Plus, we're going to give you an update on MAID in Canada. But first, we want to tell you about our show sponsor, Aura, because if you are sick and tired of all these robocalls and texts that are not from people you know, marketers and whatnot, you might want to check out Aura because, of course, data brokers are making a fortune selling your information to spammers, robocallers, others who want to learn more about you, like where you live. Aura can identify data brokers exposing your info and submit opt-out requests on your behalf. Brokers are legally required to remove your info if you ask them to, but they make it super hard. It's not just like the unsubscribe button at the bottom of a spam email. It's more intense than that. So let Aura handle it for you. Aura also protects you and your family from online threats that you can't see. It's really easy to do, so you don't have to download several different apps to get things like parental control or antivirus or identity theft insurance. You just have everything in one affordable place. So let Aura do the hard work of keeping you safe online so you can focus on other tasks with peace of mind. So right now you can go to aura.com/redacted. Make sure you check out what their services are and how they can help you, and you'll get a 2-week trial for free. Again, that's aura.com/redacted. Make sure that you can keep yourself as private as possible on the internet and on your mobile connected devices. Once again, that's aura.com/redacted.
Yes, I do have a cough drop in my mouth and still dealing with this throat thing. Salvatore in the chat says cough medicines are being pulled in various states. May want to stock up, y'all, Salvatore says. Can anyone confirm this? I mean, other than Salvatore, like multiple states? Are you traveling to multiple states, Salvatore, and seeing this yourself with your own eyes? Or is this a news report that you're picking up on? I haven't heard this. Have you heard? Guys, has anyone else heard this, that cough medicines are being taken off store shelves, or they're running out, or they're not being restocked? That's interesting. I'd love to hear more about that. So let us know in the chat, like if you guys are seeing it at your local pharmacies or something. I'm curious what that's about.
I don't know, but I would like to respond to Christian Bennett in the chat because it's their birthday. So happy birthday. Thank you for spending it with Redacted. Okay, well, let's move on because we're going to talk about this. This is something we talked about just a few weeks ago. And now, you know, maybe back then you would have said she's an anti-Semite for saying this about Israel, but now the New York Times is saying it. So here we go. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Are you ready for this?
Okay, let's do it.
Are you ready? Let me crack my knuckles here because this is how I feel about that. All right. The New York Times dropped a bombshell revelation that the rest of the West is trying to ignore. Israel has nuclear weapons.
What?
I know.
I'm shocked to learn that gambling is going on in this establishment.
As Phoebe says in Friends, that is brand new information, right? It's not, if you've been paying attention, but Washington politicians try so hard to have tunnel vision about this. Now, what's worse, Israel's nuclear weapons storage, according to the Times, was hit on October 7th during the Hamas attack. So keep this in mind the next time the U.S. media runs its mouth freaking out about Iran and their nuclear weapons. Israel has nuclear weapons. We've known this for decades, and we pretend that we don't. Now, why is this worrying? Well, because if you've been following any news, really, you know that Israel is bombing the ever-loving hell out of Gaza in retaliation for the October 7 attacks, even though the international community is asking them to please tone it down on the killing of civilians and children. So given that Israel is not a world power that the U.S. can control, despite politicians pretending otherwise, is it time to acknowledge that Israel has a nuclear arsenal and this is uncomfortable? And maybe we should talk about it, huh?
No, you can't talk about it. You can't talk about it.
Okay, because it's anti-Semitic to worry that a country at war has nuclear weapons. Now, am I saying that Israel's going to nuke Gaza? Clearly, I'm not saying that. because I can look at a map and read it.
Why the hell would they launch nuclear weapons into Gaza?
Right.
I mean,
take a look at where Gaza is. It's basically inside their front yard, I would say. So they're not going to nuke it and hurt themselves, but would they nuke anyone they deem to be an ally of Hamas from afar? We don't know that. Should we talk about it?
By the way,
we should.
Last week, we were incredibly critical of President Biden for joking about that he could blow up the world walking around with a nuclear code in his hand. He told manufacturers he told a group of auto manufacturers, I think, I don't know where that was. Was that Michigan where he was? And he was like on the floor. He's like, yeah, by the way, I can blow up the world with my nuclear codes. Yeah. See that guy over there? I can blow up the world right now. Like, really? You're a senile old man.
Right.
You are controlling the future of the world? This is troubling.
So what we're talking about here is the fact that... Go ahead, David.
I was going to say he's got like the remote access on his iPhone. He just opens the nuclear app and just like, you got to hold it for 3 seconds.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, next to his Candy Crush.
I just want to be clear. What we're talking about here is that we've known that Israel has nukes for a long time, and it's been a taboo because it was cleverly disguised as anti-Semitism. Like, oh, if you say that, you're anti-Semitic because you don't like the idea of Israel defending itself because Israel is the land of the Jews. That's bullshit, and I just won't entertain that. We're going to talk about the fact that this country that is currently at war has nuclear weapons, and we're pretending we didn't know, even though we've known. Here's the New York Times that has broken the vow of silence on this nuclear stock. Take a look at the headline. And what they're saying here is that, can we go back to the last
headline.
page?
Yeah, what was the headline?
The headline page. Militant rocket hit base linked to Israel nuclear missile program. Now, take a look at this scorched earth box here. What they're saying is that on October 6th, that looked like the rest of this picture, and October 7th, it didn't. So part of the nuclear arsenal was hit and caused this scorched earth or big, large, massive fire. They say that it was contained, but this is from satellite scans that the New York Times has, saying not only do they have them, but they were hit. Go ahead, Clayton. What were you going to say?
Well, I mean, a couple things. Number one, can you imagine being in the New York Times newsroom when you're deciding to hit publish on that story? Like everyone's like, oh my God, are we really doing this? Are we really going to finally admit that Israel has nuclear weapons?
Well,
We've never been allowed to do it.
The New York Times did cover this in 1986, and I'm going to show that to you in a second.
But also, okay, the world's response to a nuclear disaster at Fukushima, and the entire world was on edge, and we knew that there was nuclear fallout and concerns about Fukushima. And so imagine allies and partners and other people in the region would want to know if there's a nuclear disaster about to unfold, right?
Right.
So you're basically
But you're
not
talking about nuclear power, which is not as strong as nuclear weapons.
Right. It's a totally different thing, but nevertheless, right. So this is more powerful.
Right.
And so if you have allies and partners and friends in the region, I don't know. To me, it's like if you're in a neighborhood and you are doing something nefarious and suddenly you discover that, oh my God, there's a leak.
Right. I mean, I don't want to be a hypocrite.
Tell your neighbors?
The United States has nuclear weapons. The UK has nuclear weapons. Like, I'm not saying that, oh, we should have them and they don't. I'm saying we should cut the bullshit and stop pretending we don't know and upping the rhetoric around Iran.
Right.
When the rhetoric should be the same for all countries that love war, ourselves included, right?
What my saying
we
is,
have nukes and we love war.
But when you also want, if a Malmstrom Air Force Base or where there's nuclear weapons gets hit in some sort of a, I don't know, earthquake or tornado or something, you would hope that the United States would say, hey guys, we just want to, Canada, we want to let you know that's where we store some of our nuclear weapons. And there is some infrastructure problems. And we want to warn you to evacuate or just be cautious. There was silence, radio silence about it.
Okay, let's get back to what the Times has said. They said a rocket most likely fired by Hamas, most likely. We're going to just keep that in our crawl.
New York Times says this, most likely. Okay.
Okay. Struck this Israeli military base where experts say many of the country's nuclear-capable missiles are based. And then according to that visual analysis that we talked about, they said the missiles themselves weren't hit, but the rocket's impact sparked a fire that approached missile storage facilities and other sensitive weaponry. That all sounds bad. Now, listen to what it says here. Israel has never acknowledged the existence of its nuclear arsenal, though Israeli whistleblowers, U.S. officials, and satellite imagery analysts all agree that the country possesses at least a small number of nuclear weapons. Now, recall that just last month, Congress passed a law saying that it is the United States policy. This is a law on the books. It is the United States policy that a nuclear Iran is not acceptable. So I guess we're saying that a nuclear Israel is, and we're not that interested. Think of all the times that we're sending the IAEA into Russia, into Iran, into all of these countries saying we need to count everything you've got. We need a full accounting. We need to know what you're enriching to what percentage. Israel, we're like, do what you want. Just do it. We don't care, right? How do we know that Israel has had nuclear weapons since 1986? We know because of this man, Israeli Mordecai Vanunu. He was a former Israeli arms technician. In 1986, he revealed what he knew about Israel's nuclear program to the British press. And for that, which there is no crime on the books for being a whistleblower in Israel, but they still put him in prison for 18 years. He says he was subjected to extreme cruelty when he was there, including solitary confinement for 18 years. In Israel, they call him a traitor, but Amnesty International has spoken out on his behalf. They call him a prisoner of conscience. Even though he was released from prison in 2004, he was followed by the Israeli government and arrested several times for parole violations, for giving interviews for foreign journalists, and he attempted to leave Israel. He continues to attempt to leave Israel. It is the year 2023. He's been out of prison for almost 20 years, and they will not let him leave Israel. He served several other 6-month or 3-month prison sentences. Now, he has sought political asylum in Norway, and the Norwegian government was this close to letting him come, but Israel threatened them and they reneged. Same thing for Sweden. He's been trying to leave, like I said, for years, but the High Court continues to prevent him from going anywhere. He has to stay there while they watch him and sort of make his life a living hell. The Irish Times was one of the few publications that was willing to publish this when he was denied the ability to leave yet again. The Israeli newspaper Haaretz even called him an eternal prisoner of Zion, just for the fact of letting the world know that Israel has dangerous nuclear weapons and has done since the 80s. Now, why aren't politicians demanding his release from Israel? I wonder, if we stand for democracy and freedom.
Oh, well, there's a lot of hypocrisy. There's a big bowl of hypocrisy to go around. Yeah.
Same reason the U.S. was virtually silent about the death of journalist Shireen Abu Akleh. We talked about her death quite a bit. She was killed by Israeli soldiers. The U.S. wanted to do nothing about it until the international community absolutely screamed. And again, still,
but not just killed. She was targeted. They literally specifically, it wasn't like she got caught up in they were clearly marked press and they intentionally shot them, like her, and they shot at her and her camera people.
Yeah. Thank you for that clarification. You're right. We showed, I think, some of the video here. It's been over a year now. And now CNN has even allowed a former State Department employee to give this awful example of yet another thing that the U.S. knows about Israel and pretends not to. I want to play you a few pieces of this interview of a man called Josh Paul, who resigned over the U.S. support of arms for Israel. He was a former State Department employee. He spoke to CNN's Christian Armanpour and said that many U.S. government officials feel that Israel's attacks on Gaza are, he calls it a moral disaster and a policy disaster for the U.S., and that it will only prolong the suffering of both the Israeli and Palestinian people for another generation. Listen to this awful story of another awful thing that the United States knows about Israel and pretends not to.
What happened on October 7th was an absolute atrocity, was 1,000 atrocities. I think at the same time we condemn those atrocities, we have to condemn the atrocities that happen every day to Palestinians in the West Bank. You mentioned sexual violence. I was part of the human rights vetting process for arms going to Israel, and a charity called Defense of Children International Palestine drew our attention at the State Department to the sexual assault, actually the rape of a 13-year-old boy that occurred in an Israeli prison in the Mosque in Jerusalem. We examined these allegations. We believe they were credible. We put them to the government of Israel. And you know what happened the next day? The IDF went into the DCIP offices and removed all their computers and declared them a terrorist entity. I think it is vital that atrocities not happen to anyone, not sexual violations, not any kind of gross violation of human rights. We are looking at a situation where there is so much dehumanification, where people are not seen for the value that they have. And I think that's true whether you're talking about those who are attacked on their kibbutz or those who are attacked in their homes in Gaza or in the West Bank. What we really need is to center the human beings who are at the core and who are suffering so much in this conflict.
Okay, so that man is a universalist. He thinks that all lives are worth the same amount. And apparently that's why he had to leave the U.S. State Department. So the U.S. knew this and did nothing. Now listen to how Christiane Amanpour says, yeah, but we have to embrace Israel if we want to get them to do right. And we want them to do right, so we have to embrace them. I want you, as you listen to her say this, to imagine her saying this about Russia. Just watch.
As you know, the U.S. administration believes, and you know, whether it says it publicly or behind closed doors, that the only way to get, for instance, it's not a secret that there's no love lost between President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu before this, over the attempted, essentially, these are my words, overthrow of a democratic system in their so-called judicial reform. I mean, President Biden didn't even invite him to the White House. It's a total rarity. However, they believe that in order to affect Israeli policy, the likes of which you're talking now, to affect the policy and make it more towards the peace process, they have to embrace Israel, defend Israel, support Israel, in order to get the trust of the Israeli people, so that they can then speak clearly to the Israeli government. And you saw what happened under the Obama administration. The people of Israel didn't support the Obama administration. They thought Obama didn't support them.
Okay, a lot of problems with her questions. First, why do we care about what Israeli people think of our leaders? Is that a democracy that we let other people now vote and we do what they want? I'm curious about that. Are we going to do what Russians want now?
No, we don't care about that. We absolutely care what Israel thinks.
What Israeli, are they voters? Do they have voting cards? Is that?
No, but they.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
Do we care what all country citizens think of our leaders? Do we make policy decisions based on that? Because that sounds like foreign interference to me. So second, do we get countries to stop what they're doing by embracing them? Because I missed that memo when it comes to Libya or Russia or Syria
or Iraq.
Yeah, we embrace them. Like, she literally made this like, we got to be hugging them in order to, right? I saw a comment saying this is Hamas propaganda. Again, don't piss me off. Get the heck out of here with that. This is an Israeli whistleblower.
Don't pay attention to that troll.
Okay. Saying we have nukes and we're watching a country go nuclear and we are pretending we don't know.
It's also the New York Times reporting and saying the quiet part out loud.
Right.
That's not Hamas propaganda.
Yeah.
That's literally the New York Times reporting, opening their mouth and admitting the quiet part out loud that we've known for decades. Has nothing to do with Hamas that we created,
Right.
by the way.
Okay. Third, now, how is that going for us? This, what she keeps doing. This is the African anteater dance. This,
Embracing.
From Can't Buy Me Love. So it's not going that well for us. We don't seem to be able to get Israel to put the gun down. Just today, the Wall Street Journal reports that Israel may use seawater to flood the tunnel systems in Gaza. And the Wall Street Journal literally reports that sentiment inside the U.S. for this plan is mixed, meaning a lot of humans with a conscience want this to end. So if we can't prevent Israel from a barrage of attacks on civilians, how can we be A-okay with them having nuclear weapons that we know they have? and have pretended not to. And how can we be A-okay without admitting that this war on Gaza could go on for another year? Again, listen to what Josh Paul, formerly from the State Department, said about that.
Well, I mean, of course, Prime Minister Netanyahu is in it for the long haul, because the longer this lasts, the more he can postpone any sort of trial, given the corruption indictments he's facing. So I think we have to be very careful to separate out what is in the political interests of Prime Minister Netanyahu, of his right-wing coalition, and what is in the actual interest and the security interest of the people of Israel.
The people of Israel are behind this war. They cannot live with that kind of threat anymore, and they want it neutralized. But they're not necessarily behind their government.
Okay, I wanted you to play her question. I wanted to play that question for a reason. She's saying the people of Israel can no longer live this way. And so she's ranking here who we care about, because I would say Palestinians have felt for a long time that they can no longer live this way. And so she's saying because Israelis can't take it anymore, the violence is okay. But when Palestinians couldn't take it anymore, the violence is not. Now, if you have been watching this show for a long time, you know that we are peace extremists. We're saying no violence is okay, right? But who do we listen to? She's ranking human suffering, which is the conversation that I reject the most around this conflict, is whose suffering gets to make TV. Go ahead, David.
I say she's probably fearful of getting labeled anti-Semitic. We have to support everything, the nukes, all that stuff, and not ask any questions, because we'll be anti-Semites.
Right. And so she says, you know, because of that, they can't take it anymore. So Hamas must be neutralized, by which she means killed. And watch his response to that.
How do you neutralize Hamas? The answer is through a lasting political settlement that provides a Palestinian state, not a process that promises one, holds out the promise, and never gets to it. You neutralize Hamas by showing the Palestinian people that if they want to succeed, the route is there for them to do so through a political process rather than through violent resistance. Until we have that political process in place, you cannot defeat the Palestinian resistance.
Okay, so I'm actually surprised they gave him 15 minutes to speak this peace platform. CNN gives almost no time to people who speak of peace. Go ahead.
No, she pushed back quite a bit on it. You know, she
didn't like it, but they let him talk.
I mean,
surprisingly.
CNN, of course, absolutely wants war, loves war, thrives off of war, makes money off of war. I mean, CNN was built on war. Wolf Blitzer in Iraq, like this is how they make their money. They want this conflict. It gives them 24-hour news coverage around it. And they make a lot of money on it. So I'm surprised, and she was pushing back on the idea of peace and Palestinians and all of that. So she was doing her part for CNN.
Right. So back to the U.S. response. Given that we spend so much time worrying about nuclear weapons in Russia, Iran, North Korea, because of the possibility that they would be used during violent conflicts, about Israel, what do we do now? Should this become a part of our conversation? Or do we keep pretending that we don't know and just let the New York Times, maybe this one will tomorrow line the waste paper baskets, as they say in news?
We're not going to do anything about it, because how in the world do you think they got this technology? Where do you think it mysteriously came from? Right? Where every piece of weaponry that is in Israel.
Well,
I mean, are we led to believe that we don't know anything about it?
No, I mean, okay. So the digital weapon that we used on Iran, we worked with Israel on it. So it's collaborative. Right. And so when Mordecai Vanunu came with these drawings, he was able to prove that Israel was more than capable, because Israel's a technologically advanced place, of building these things. We know that, right? So yeah, I'm sure, like I said, this is the worst kept secret in Washington, but we try so hard to pretend not to notice.
Also, isn't it, a violation of international law to be providing weapons and assistance to nuclear countries?
I believe you're right.
So what other international, we're sending billions of dollars in weapons. Are we doing, so we don't acknowledge they have nuclear weapons? Then that gets us off the hook for international law. We don't have to adhere to international law and the International Criminal Court, which, by the way, we're not a part of anyway, because we care. It's ridiculous.
Do we know that we didn't send them the nukes in the first place?
That's my point. Like collaborating, sending parts, centrifuge. All of it, of course. Oh, no. Israel totally did it on their own, and the United States had no knowledge of it. Right. Okay, sure.
All right. Again, we are peace extremists here. Someone in the chat keeps pointing out that non-pacifist means violent. By non-pacifist, we mean diplomatic. That you're not just pacifist, like, let it be, I'm going to live in the woods like Henry David Thoreau. We're like, let's solve things like civilized adults. That's what we mean by non-pacifist.
And talk with one another.
And peace extremist is peace at any cost, never weapons. Okay. That's our platform here, and that's our bias.
Including October 7th. Like, killing other human beings should never, ever happen. It should never happen. And I mean, as a last resort, but it shouldn't even be a last resort.
Right. But you will never convince me that the war on terror works, that killing people is actually how you get less terror, because now it's 30 years of the war on terror, and we know that it only gets us more terror. So
it promulgates terror.
Right.
Exactly. It creates more of it. So anyway.
I have never seen anyone make an argument that the war on terror works. Never. If you would like to bring that to my doorstep, go ahead. Let's have that talk another
Cheney,
time.
Donald Rumsfeld, Dick Cheney. Can we get Dick Cheney on line one, please?
Do they even defend it?
Oh, yeah. Donald Rumsfeld, right up until the day he died, believed that what we were doing in Iraq and killing, random innocent people and trying to target terrorists was working. It was keeping America safer. Like, that's the whole line from the Bush administration.
That's not...
That it's keeping America safer. That is the war on terror. The idea that you kill terrorists, you're going after and you're bombing people indiscriminately, and many of them, well, most of them civilians, you're creating more terrorists. You're creating a hydra. You're literally making America less safe with your war on terror.
Right.
And by the way, invading other countries. America is less safe today because of the war on terror. That is undeniable. Undeniable. Just look at the United States southern border at the moment, by the way. All right, we've got more news to get to here on your Tuesday. It is Tuesday.
We do indeed. We're going to look at why men of military age are flooding the U.S. Could it be because of low military enrollment? Is it a death for a passport? Tit for tat? That sounds like a terrible deal. We're going to talk about that. We have a guest to explain it. We're going to talk about why parents are drugging their kids with melatonin to go to sleep. Is it because they're too lazy to sleep train? And is it killing them? Should we maybe not be using the quick way out through drugs?
Also, can I tell? Yeah, I want to tell a story.
Yeah, go ahead.
Also, in Canada, we're going to look at Canada tonight. And I don't know if you know this, but the Trudeau administration appears to be fudging their suicide numbers up there. You know how they have that that MAID program, which, you can call up and have the Canadian government kill you. And they're very proud of it. They run television ads about how, if you want to end your life early, whether you're anxious, depressed, you have a chronic terminal illness, give us a call and the MAID program will take care of you. Well, it turns out that the numbers may be actually far worse, way more than they're telling us. And is the Trudeau administration lying about these medical assistance in dying numbers up in Canada, which we'll talk about.
All right. But first, we want to tell you about our friends over at Trust and Will, because, hey, maybe you have a New Year's resolution to get more organized, make sure your estate is in order. Even if you're a super healthy person, it's just prudent to make sure that whatever it is you're working so hard for, your estate, your family, your wealth, your assets is protected. That's why it's great to just check out Trust and Will, because you can create and manage a custom estate plan starting at just $159. So go to trustandwill.com/redacted and you'll get 10% off plus free document shipping, because of course the things we build our future around are all the things worth protecting. And making an estate plan now means gaining security of your assets and peace of mind for you and your loved ones. And in fact, when we wrote our estate plan, just after we had our third baby, one of the exercises that I really liked about that is writing like a mission statement for your family. So we did that to talk about why have we worked so hard our whole life? What is it we're passing down? So it's not just money or assets. We want our legacy to live on so they know, why did we work hard? What is it we're leaving? And what is our legacy? It's a great sort of thing that you can add to whatever it is you decide to create when you create your will. It's just kind of a fun exercise. Definitely not required if you go to trustandwill.com/redacted, but do it anyway if you'd like. So again, you can get 10% off your estate plan and free document shipping. So just visit trustandwill.com/redacted. One more time, that's trustandwill.com/redacted.
Why are military-age men pouring across the United States border being given refuge, given cell phones, given ID cards, given money, being taken care of? Why is this happening in the United States? And the Biden administration pretends that it's not happening, but we have the footage. Take a look at your screen. Of course, these are multiple reports now of military-age men pouring across the United States border. And it seems like mostly from China. So it's been a great mystery over the past year. Why are they doing this? Why are they arriving? If you're fleeing a war zone, you of course show up with your children, your women, your wives, right? These are people that you are saving, the families that you are bringing and trying to find a better life for. But no, there's no children, there's no wives, there's no women, it's just men. Well, at least until yesterday, we could speculate. We had some idea why this was happening. But on the floor of the United States Senate, Senator Dick Durbin has now let the cat out of the bag and explains exactly why this is happening.
What troubles me about the debate now about the southern border is it is one half of the immigration equation. Yes, we need order at the border. Yes, we need to have changes in the laws that reflect the reality of the overwhelming numbers from all over the world who are coming to our shores and our border. But there is also an incredible demand for legal immigration into this country even now. The presiding officer, my colleague from the state of Illinois, has legislation which addresses one aspect of that. Her bill, and I hope I describe it accurately, says that if you're an undocumented person in this country and you can pass the physical and the required test, background test, the like, you can serve in our military, and if you do it honorably, we will make you citizens of the United States. Do we need that? Do you know what the recruiting numbers are at the Army and the Navy and the Air Force? They can't reach their quotas each month. They can't find enough people to join our military forces. And there are those who are undocumented who want the chance to serve and risk their lives for this country. Should we give them the chance? I think we should. And let me tell you about
So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. It seems like we have an answer to the great mystery now, why this is happening. Someone who's been tracking these military-age men coming across the border is Anthony Rubin from muckraker.com. He's been doing amazing reporting on this, deep into the jungles. He's been tracking this through South America, from Ecuador, tracking these migrants all the way up to the United States border, and so much more that we could talk about. Anthony, welcome back to the show. Good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me on, Clayton. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. It's great to have you back. Specifically today, we could talk about so much of your travels, and we'll have you back and we can talk more about what you saw in Ecuador and other parts south of the border. But today, I specifically wanted to focus on this military-age men Chinese story. So you've seen the videos at the border. Of course, you've seen your reporting. You saw Senator Dick Durbin there basically confirming why they're coming across. What did you discover and uncover in your travels as you were tracking these individuals?
Yeah, absolutely. So as it relates to the Chinese, I mean, as you said, I mean, we could talk about so much here. This crisis is extremely complex. But as it relates to the Chinese and what I saw, the Chinese have basically established dedicated networks along their route all the way to the United States. And so what we discovered along our trip from Ecuador all the way to the United States border are dedicated hotels, basically dedicated hubs where these Chinese illegal aliens stop at. And, you know, it's like known along their route that you will stop at these specific hotels. One of the ones that we stopped at was this hotel in Pasto, Colombia. And we just stumbled upon it by accident. It happened to be near an airport there. And we showed up, and we were the only people that were staying at that hotel that were not Chinese. And all of them, every single one of them, was headed to the United States. They were either going to be continuing and crossing through the Darien Gap, or if they had the appropriate visa, they were going to be flying directly into Mexico and then crossing up there. But the point is that, you know, whereas, you know, for example, the Venezuelans, as an example, they are extremely poor. They just kind of trek up on foot. They'll pitch tents along the way, stuff like that. The Chinese have dedicated hubs, hotels that they'll actually stay at along the way, and it's a very advanced route system.
So it's an advanced route system structured by whom? Who's setting this route system up? Is it the United States? Is it NGOs? Is it the Chinese government?
As far as I know, it's done by Chinese for Chinese. I mean, I don't have any evidence. You know, we know that the United Nations footprint is all over this route to the United States. But as far as these hubs go, you know, there is no evidence that I have to indicate that it's run by the United States or the United Nations. It appears to be just Chinese by Chinese for Chinese. You know, you had me on this past summer. We discussed a blueprint that I was giving by a Chinese illegal alien. That's how we actually, you know, followed this route. We just followed that same blueprint. You know, everybody, I saw the comments on your show after you published it. They thought I was lying to you or that I was some sort of conspiracy theorist. And now we've actually followed the route. I mean, now I have all the evidence. And so one of the stops on that route was in Pasto. So we stopped at this hotel. And sure enough, it's just full of Chinese. So the point is, if we go back to that document was just written by a Chinese person, could be CCP affiliated. I have no idea. I can't confirm that. But, you know, is the CCP, for example, involved in this? I would find it hard to believe that they are not. Let's put it that way.
So a targeted strategic invasion. And then it's odd then, of course, then why is the United States government, if this is a targeted, willing invasion of the United States, you hear Senator Dick Durbin on the floor of Congress saying the reason, you know, we need military-age men coming across. They will be given citizenship. They will be given, you know, they'll fight in the military. They'll be given citizenship. And if their backgrounds check out, he kind of just said that as an aside. Oh, if their backgrounds check out, he just kind of made that as like a little sidebar. Like, we'll probably check them, I suppose. But they'll be brought into the United States military to fight on our behalf because U.S. military recruitment numbers are down. So the U.S. military would be using Chinese Communist Party military-age men to fight on the United States behalf. Like, something is incredibly fishy here.
Right. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that is probably the only way that they can actually amass enough manpower to drag us into another decade-long endless war. If we could even afford that, if the US dollar doesn't collapse before that, I mean, that's a different story. But any patriotic American that has a good head between his shoulders knows that all these wars at this point are total nonsense. Everybody's waking up to the BS that is these endless wars throughout the world. Now it's the Ukraine and Israel. Nothing to do with American sovereignty or security. And the only way that they're going to be able to get enough manpower is to get these people and, you know, ship them over there and guarantee them citizenship. And I believe that that's the game plan. And then, you know, you'll give these people citizenship, however many millions of them, and, you know, many more on the way, and it will just wash out all the homegrown Americans. That's what this is. This is replacement migration. It should be extremely evident at this point.
You know, there's been a conspiracy theory, and I love that you're the breaker of conspiracy theories, by the way. So that's hilarious to me that the last time you were on our show, you exposed the China blueprint, and people said, that's a conspiracy theory. Anthony, you're just full of garbage, you know, sitting from their basement typing out as keyboard warriors. And then you and the team actually follow the entire path and confirm it, which is amazing. So there's a conspiracy theory. Here's another one for you to bust. That there are Chinese spies living in the United States, that there are Chinese spies coming across the border and they've infiltrated and they are here inside of the United States. And of course, people on the left would say that's a conspiracy theorist. You're a MAGA nut job. What have you been able to uncover in that regard, Chinese spies in the United States?
Oh, gosh. So again, just to bring it back to the discussion that we had this past summer in that expose that we were talking about that I published, I had an interview with a Chinese illegal alien that is now living in the United States. And he told me flat out that there are Chinese police. And that's why he wanted me to blur out his face, because he's worried that they will come knock on his door and possibly kidnap him back to China. In the video that I just published yesterday that we're now talking about, I interviewed another Chinese man who openly said, yeah, there are Chinese police. And none of this is,
in the United States.
In the United States. They'll openly tell you this stuff, you know? And I mean, this is not even debatable anymore. I mean, there have been Chinese police stations that have been busted in Los Angeles and New York City.
And New York.
So this is what's going on. And you know, so I mean, so we know that that's going on. I'm not even going to sit here and debate it and act that, you know, try to qualify that statement. No, we know that that's going on. But then the bigger concern, or one of the bigger concerns, I mean, it's concerning on a multiple of fronts, but one of the bigger concerns would be, okay, now you have all of these tens of thousands of Chinese foreign nationals that have come to the country illegally. There's videos of them. A lot of them, they'll be brazen. They'll post on social media, firing off weapons and such in the desert. We've already published that. But now, what happens one day when the communist Chinese police come knocking on their door and say, hey, listen, we need a favor for you, or else this might happen to your mother or brother or sister back in China. Or we need a favor for you just, or we might show up and, break your legs or do whatever to. I mean, it's blackmail. Think of any sort of blackmail that they could use to leverage somebody, and that's what's going to happen. And so to think that that's not already happening and that's not going to continue to happen, and that's not going to accelerate as even more tens of thousands of Chinese pour across the border, would be extremely foolish not to expect that. And it should concern everybody.
It's terribly, well, it concerns all of us. It certainly doesn't concern the Biden administration. And frankly, very many Republicans either seem to be focused on this issue. Much more concerned about Ukraine and much more concerned about what's happening in the Middle East than what's happening at our own border. Anthony Rubin, amazing work. Thank you for the continued amazing work over at muckraker.com. We'll have a link in the show description for anyone that wants to check out your latest report as well, so they can go and check out the great journalism that you guys are doing over there. Anthony, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Clayton. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Anthony. Really appreciate it. And amazing work that they're doing. I'll have a link in the description for you guys to check out a little bit later, some of their work. So, but unbelievable. We get this admission right from Dick Durbin. Oh yeah, so here's the thing. If you can pass the physical, which some members of our own, we've even lowered the physical standards in the United States now. So
right.
Like, what physical are we talking about?
You have to have a double standard.
Wait a second. You guys just went through the Darien Gap, survived a jungle, barely survived malaria, cholera, dysentery, gonorrhea. Who else knows? What else that you got down there? All the way up from Ecuador, traveling through piranha, snakes, all sorts of cartels and violence. I think you passed the physical test.
Right.
And now you're here in the United States, and you're welcomed into the United States military, where we'll give you citizenship to fight our foreign wars in whatever wars we're going to fight now. I've seen some estimates today that there are upwards of 300,000 men of military age already in the United States, and that's on the low end on an estimate. 300,000 ready to go and ready to be activated inside the United States. So, all right. We got more news to get to here on your Tuesday. We're going to look at Canada and this MAID program, the Medical Assistance in Dying program, and why the Trudeau government is likely fudging the numbers big time. When did it start? Did it just start? Did it start a few years ago? And they've been lying about these numbers all along. And so it's actually far worse. And they've been hiding it behind things like cancer and other designations. We'll talk about that. Also, is it okay to drug your kids to go to sleep? Are parents so damn lazy in 2023 that they've now just farmed out that job to the biopharmaceutical complex? We're going to drug our children so they go to sleep. That's actually what's happening. We're going to talk about the massive increase in the United States in parents who are drugging their children to go to sleep. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at Lear Capital, because I don't know if you've been paying attention to gold over the past few days. Gold just hit a record, an all-time high. They're calling Powell's bluff on rate hikes. Notice Bitcoin, notice gold, notice silver hitting record highs. And our friends over at Lear Capital, if you want to start buying gold, like here's a gold coin that I bought from Lear Capital right there, and focus. And this is just a simple gold coin. You can have it shipped right to your house, right? This is 1 ounce of fine gold shipped right to your house. You can also get the silver bars as well. This is 10 troy ounces. I don't want to get my fingerprints all over it. 10 troy ounces of fine silver right here from Lear Capital, shipped right to your house. You can keep it in your own safe, or you can store it off-site in a storage facility that's under 24-hour protection, armed protection, and totally protected for you. You can do all of that. Also, Lear Capital will help you get set up with a self-directed account. So if you've got an old IRA sitting around, or an old 401k that's just sitting around, and you don't know what to do with it, well, do you want to be investing in the stock market like Nancy Pelosi? Or do you want to be able to roll that over so you control it, and then you can invest in things like gold, silver, real estate, actual tangible assets that you control? Lear Capital can help you do that. They can help you set up with a self-directed account as well. So they're fantastic. Thousands of 5-star reviews on Trustpilot. And if you buy right now, if you buy 1 ounce of gold, Lear Capital is giving away a free ounce of silver. That's right. That's incredible. Literally free silver excuse me, that you can keep or sell immediately. And there's a lot of gold companies you can choose from, but Lear Capital has 25 years experience, thousands of 5-star reviews, risk-free guarantee that gives you 24 hours to review your purchase, make a decision before committing to it. It's a top choice when buying gold or silver. So there's an 800 number right there on your screen. Call that 800 number. They love to talk with you on the phone. You'll get a free gold and silver investor's guide when you call them, and you can receive up to $15,000 in free bonus metals with a qualified purchase. Go to call 1-800-613-3557. 1-800-613-3557, or go to learredacted.com. learredacted.com.
Hey, we got a 10-pound comment from James Bond.
James Bond,
who said if you don't promote voting independent, then you're promoting the WEF, the UN, and the WHO. I see your point.
That's a good point.
I see a point there.
I think on this show, I think I say it maybe every couple of weeks, that both parties, Republicans and Democrats in the United States, are corrupt. And I'm a registered independent. I wouldn't vote for either of those corrupt organizations. There's few beacons of light in those organizations that are kind of independent voices. And you wonder, like a Marjorie Taylor Greene, who she almost hates like all of her Republican colleagues. They all hate her.
Yeah. Tulsi Gabbard type.
Yeah, but why is Marjorie Taylor Greene even a member of the Republican Party anymore? Should she just become independent?
Right. Same with RFK Jr. He
ran independent.
He left the Democratic Party because they wouldn't have him.
But he's more in alignment with them now on a lot of issues that are, it's clear he's more in alignment, certainly on Israel and other big issues like that. So he might as well just go back into the fold as a Democrat.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few out there, but you're right about that. Good point, James Bond.
Thank you, James Bond.
That
I like
is your
it.
real name.
Okay. Well, parents are drugging their kids with melatonin to get the little devils to sleep, and this has led to a 530% increase in melatonin poisoning and deaths.
Way to go, parents.
Since 2012. Now, I get it. Sleep training your babies is super hard. All you want to do, my parents used to say, we love our kids so much, but all we want them to do is sleep. I get that. But can you skip the hard work of sleep training by drugging them? And is that what parents are doing? Now, melatonin is a hormone that human bodies use to put themselves to sleep. It begins to be made naturally at 4 months old. That's why you can't sleep train before 4 months old. But it has become really popular in the last decade with people who struggle to sleep because it's marketed as natural. It's natural when you make it. When you buy it in a bottle, it's a synthetic. It used to come from cows. They would just take it from their stomachs. It doesn't anymore. Now it's just made in a factory. I'm sorry. It is an $800 million per year industry, and parents are using it in place of proper sleep training. God help us. Take a look at this. This is a study from the Journal of American Medical Association, JAMA Pediatrics. A few things to note here. It points out how melatonin is considered a dietary supplement, so not regulated by the Food and Drug Administration, and requires no prescription. You probably know that. You see it at Costco, right? So JAMA surveyed parents to see how often they're giving it to their kids. They found that kids are getting melatonin sometimes daily, as young as 1 year old. Now, the Epic Times made this graphic from this data, and this is a useful summary of the findings, so I'll show it to you. Look at how many parents admit to have given their kids melatonin regularly, and these different age groups. Now, I kind of get giving it to the little ones because they're a pain in the butt, But the teenagers or the tweenagers here, 10 to 13, is kind of interesting because they should know how to put themselves to sleep. But in fact, most sleep research shows that you have to teach a child to be able to wind themselves down. And that's a skill that can last them their whole life. And if you skip it, it's worse in your teen years. Obviously, maybe these kids have skipped it. You
can always see the kids too. You can always tell like the teens where the parents didn't do it correctly.
That sounds judgmental.
Well, you just said it. I'm saying it again. Like if they didn't get the proper training, then they
I'm judging who didn't do it, but I'm not judging the outcome of the kids.
I am.
So, okay,
But
you do that.
But you can tell, and it's not like, I don't know. I'm just saying that you can tell that it was not practiced at an early age. And they were like, it was kind of a wild nighttime routine.
Yeah.
And, and that kid is now still wild, like,
right.
We all had friends like that. We all had teenage friends like that. You're like, go to sleep, John. Like, what the hell's wrong with that kid?
That just can't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why sleepaway camp was such a shock for my kids, because they're like, these other kids are just up. They don't know how to put themselves to sleep. They don't know how to wind themselves down. And they're on their screens.
There were certain girls, with our daughter, and they were like, all these girls wanted to go to sleep. And then it's like the chatty Cathys are over there nonstop.
So my kids, when they do that kind of thing, they need earplugs and eye masks because they can't deal. They're with other people. So where was I? Okay. As a result, more children are being poisoned by melatonin because it is not regulated. So look at this report from the CDC showing that in 2020, melatonin became the most frequently ingested substance among children, reported to the National Poison Control Centers. Okay, that's bad. But it is worth noting, this is a tiny bit better, that 95% of those poisonings were unintentional. So even though...
How many?
95%.
Oh, so only 5%?
Well, okay, the numbers are up of people giving it to their kids. The poisonings, though, come from kids accidentally ingesting too much. Now, why, Clayton, would a child take too much melatonin?
Well, because they look like gummy bears.
Yes,
and they're
take a
like
look.
little sweet bottles of gummy bears.
Yeah, they are raspberry flavored. They're like candy.
I want to eat those right now.
Right. So at least 2 children have died from overeating these, most likely thinking they're candy. Maybe you think the FDA might want to look into that? Like, maybe it's not a good idea.
Well, and if earlier in the day,
for them. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, if earlier in the day, like Julia says in our chat, stop feeding your children so much juice and sugar earlier in the day, and maybe then they'll actually have a better nighttime. But then these things, I think they have sugar in them too. Like they're sweet. They taste sweet. They've got like, I don't know, beet juice, whatever. So it's sweet. So it's like they're kind of continuing the sweetness.
Right. What's more is that it's not regulated. So they tested 25 brands of melatonin that comes over the counter, and they found actual melatonin quantity ranged from 74% to 340% of the labeled quantity. So you can be getting something that's way stronger than you think it is. And then, of course, children would be poisoned by that, right? Because clearly that's not safe and it's not regulated by the FDA. But, more parents now saying they need this because their kids have sleep problems. Again, because I've always been so militant about my kids' sleep. Anytime there was someone who's like, my kid won't sleep, I'm like, you got to be consistent. You got to stay with it, be strict. But I also was one of those, like, if you don't go to sleep, I will take your favorite doll and rip it to shreds. So now you know what you're dealing with here. That's why my kids go to sleep.
Oh my God. It's always, it's like a crazy situation in there. And because I'll go in and put like Eve to bed. She's our 7-year-old. And it's like, okay, ready? All right, kiss you. And I just read you a story. And then it's like, but now I want a cup of water. And then I was just walking out the door, lights off, kiss you. But now can I have another cup of water? Can I have this? Can you do it? Oh my God.
I wanted to tell you about what so-and-so did at school.
You need to go to bed now.
Right. I mean, it takes discipline and consistency as a parent. I'm going to give you some tips for this later. But also, it means you have to take their screens away earlier. The same thing we know about ourselves, right? Take a look at this helpful graphic I found, is that any type of technology, TV, smartphone, whatever it is going to display a blue light, and that blue light suppresses melatonin production in the pineal gland. And then you don't have melatonin, so you can't get yourself to sleep. So then this little orange thing here, you take a pill because you've stopped your body from doing it, Clayton, playing his Switch late at night, and then you can't put yourself to sleep, right? So is this an epidemic of kids not being able to sleep, or is it caused by something that we can see? And then, we need to turn to the synthetic hormone because we've made it so that our body can't make the real hormone. Now, one thing about melatonin is it's an endocrine disruptor. That means it disrupts the balance of your hormones because a hormone, anything you take at synthetic levels and disrupt the equilibrium of your hormones, you're going to have undesirable results. And in fact, a 2021 study found that melatonin accelerates puberty in mice. So is that something you want to mess with your children? Take a look at that from 2021. All this to say, you got to sleep train your kids. You can't use drugs. Now, I have been known to give my kids maybe a Benadryl when we change time zones. If I had my kids in New York, and if we would go back to California to visit my family, I've done that a time or two, given them a half a melatonin when we switch time zones to go to sleep, to adjust, but not ever for sleep training, and never more than once, maybe a year. So, if you're doing this as something that in place of sleep training, that's really dangerous. You got to read the book. You got to be consistent. This is, in my opinion, the holy grail about sleep for all young children, healthy sleep habits, happy child.
We have friends that have children on the way. Like they're like, hey, Clayton, what do you have 3 kids, and he tips, I'm about to have a child. I'm like, you need to read that book. That's like the holy grail book right there.
And it really prioritizes sleep for the whole family and talks about specifically what they need at every stage of development, all the way through teen years. So yeah, this is not the Ozempic of sleep training. You can't, pill yourself out of this. I mean, you can, but you set your child up for a lifelong sleep disturbance. So read the book. Let us know what you think of that.
Yeah. People are in the chat that have a lot of comments about this. A lot of people saying, yeah, blue light's terrible for you. A lot of people are saying, let's see, Mona DTW says, yeah, drugs are bad. Yes. And Storm Farm says CBD is a lot healthier. And other people are saying, remember the Flintstone vitamins? Do they still have Flintstone vitamins? Weren't those things just full of sugar?
Yeah, they were.
But yeah, you're getting your all sorts of vitamins by those things.
Right. One person says you're a terrible mother, so thanks for that.
over the course of 3 years, I think we made it. My daughter and I made it through about 2 chapters of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, because I would read it to her every night, and I would read it to her like this. And she was out in 5 minutes. So literally, over the course of 3 years, we made it two chapters in.
Yeah.
It's funny. We had
that was my drugs.
There you go.
Over the summer, just as an aside here, while we're just chatting about sleep training, your father was here visiting.
Yeah.
And my mother came to visit as well. We had a house full of grandparents, and we learned that your dad has trouble sleeping, and he's in his 60s, late 60s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And my mom as well, early 70s. And I'm like, what? She's like, I don't know, my mind races at night, and my mind races at night. Your dad was like, I can't sleep. And, so I said, here's what I do. Someone taught me this one time, which is you lay there and just close your eyes, and then you breathe incredibly deeply, counting to try to get as high as you can, count to 50.
Uh-huh.
But each breath in, breath out counts as 1. So a deep breath in, breath out, that's 1 all the way up. And I'm like, you will not get past 15 or 17 on the list. There's no way.
Yes, but both of those test cases you're talking about, the grandparents,
they came back the next day and they said,
were on their phones. That's why.
No, it worked.
Right. Both of them were up on their phones, fooling around on something and
looking at blue light,
fooling around and fixating on specific issues.
Probably on the Facebook.
I'm not naming names of what but yes, both of them. I checked my phone and I saw this and that upset me, and then I was,
Yeah. These grandparents on their Facebook, they got to check in on their words with friends and Facebook.
Right. Or, I needed to check in at the office. Well, again, if that's what you got to take responsibility for being off your screen.
You got to keep the little kids off of TikTok, and you got to keep the grandparents off of Facebook.
Mm-hmm. And you got to keep Clayton off of his Switch.
No, I'm good.
No, he's not.
I'm good. And you got to keep Natalie off of Sudoku on her iPhone.
I read a Kindle at night.
Oh, are you going to lie to people?
I don't.
Are you going to lie?
I do play people? Sudoku sometimes, but not every night before bed.
The truth comes out.
I read actual books and a Kindle that doesn't have specifically for that reason.
And I do too. All right.
I'm 100%. Sorry, I'm 100% PBS Space Time. I love that show. It's astrophysics nerd stuff, but the guy's got a really soothing voice. So when he gets a new one come out, it's like usually about once a week, like a new one comes out, I watch it during the daytime, so I get to see the whole thing, and then I go back and watch previous episodes at night. And I don't watch them. I just turn it on and set it on my next to my bed, and then the guy just talks astrophysics and math, and I'm out.
All right, I like it.
All right, Teresa says yes. I've fallen asleep with my phone in my hand before.
Yeah,
I think that's all happened. We got to stop that.
You shouldn't do it. Clayton did a segment when he was still with Fox of some doctor that said, like, the light in your room is literally like poison for your body.
Yeah. Like if you've got like little LED lights on little electronics scattered around your room that cause like ambient light, cover them with like little duct tape or something, because it like even that light while you're sleeping is disrupting your body, which is crazy. I think it's true. If you've ever slept in like a totally dark room with like blackout shades, you sleep like a baby. Then if you got a room that has like lights on and plugs with ambient LED lights turned on and all that stuff, you don't sleep as well. It's true.
It's true. My bedroom, I have light blocking curtains, and my bedroom always is dark. I can go in there right now and it's dark. So if I want to take a nap, it's dark.
I know. Final thought on this. When I lived in New York City, when I worked at Fox News, my first apartment was literally right next to the studio in Times Square.
Yeah.
So no matter what light stuff you had trying to block out windows, it was like Kramer on Seinfeld with the Kenny Rogers chicken roaster sign coming through his window. Like it was like being on the surface of the sun at 3 a.m. with those lights shining through, those neon lights. All right. Hey, we want to tell you about our community, our Redacted Plus Club. It's free to watch the show, of course, and support us. But if you'd like to support independent journalism and take that one extra little step, you can for the price of a cup of coffee once a month. You can come over to the Redacted Plus. Go to redacted.inc.
Oh, someone says you should start a Redacted book club. We have one, and it is at the Redacted Plus membership. So thank you for asking. That's something that we started to film and we'll put up in the Redacted Plus membership.
It started this week, actually.
Yeah, thank you for asking. That's exactly what you get.
Look for it Friday. For the first one Friday.
Here we go.
So just go to redacted.com or redacted.inc. It's not .com, sorry, redacted.inc, and then sign on the community there. You can join the Plus Club, so we'll have exclusive content, including the new Redacted Book Club. That's private. It's only for community members. And then we'll have we also have new interviews going up there as well that are going to be just for Redacted members, Plus Club members. It's a way to support us here on the show and support independent journalism. If you'd like to do that, again, for the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you'll be able to join that community, get some extra bonus content, and be able to give back a little bit to support what we do here as independent journalists. So we really appreciate it. Again, that's redacted.inc is the place to go. Redacted.inc. Well, government-assisted suicide is back at the top of the news in Canada. It's now been discovered that in Canada, part of their MAID program, the Assistance in Killing Its Citizens program, the Trudeau government apparently has been lying about the number of people who are actually killed through the MAID program. They lead the world, by the way, in euthanasia. We also have another angle to this story, a woman who was basically assigned as part of the MAID program to be killed in Canada, managed to get life-saving surgery by crossing the border into the United States. And now she's okay. So she would have been killed in Canada, went to the United States, and was saved with life-saving surgery. So what is going on with these numbers? What is Canada trying to hide? David Creighton, who writes at the Post-Millennial, has been covering this story extensively, done a great job, and joins us now. David, good to see you. So first of all, let's start with the numbers piece of this. Their numbers were already astronomical. I mean, Canada leads the world in assisted suicides, and yet they're hiding numbers?
Well, Stats Canada, which is Statistics Canada, and I'll tell you a bit more about them in a minute. But they have revealed on their own website, this is the beauty of this, if you will. They're so proud of their deception that they put it on their website. And StatsCan revealed, and I'll read it exactly, what they have done in terms of reporting the data for the medical assistance in suicide. That's Canada's euthanasia program. No bones about it. It's a euthanasia program. And it says, quote, in the database, the underlying cause of death is defined as the disease or injury that initiated the train of morbid events leading directly to death. As such, MAID deaths are coded to the underlying condition for which MAID was requested. So to break that down into common English, it's saying they're going to report MAID deaths based on the reason, the medical reason, if there is one, that somebody decided they wanted medically assisted suicide. Now, two questions come to mind. How long has this been going on? Are the numbers already corrupted? Or is this from now on? They're going to be reporting this because the numbers are horrifying. For the last year that we have numbers for, which is 2022, 13,200 people committed suicide through the MAID program. The year before, over 10,000. Now, what are the numbers for this year? Well, certainly more than 13,000. They're escalating. So we're looking about at least 35,000 people who have sought suicide through Canada's euthanasia program. But my question is, again, are they fudging the numbers up till now? Or are they saying from this point forth, we're going to be fudging the numbers? Because clearly this is the Canadian government trying to hide the numbers, because you have reported, I have reported, there's been documentaries reporting that Canada is the suicide capital of the world. It's the assisted suicide capital of the world. People are literally coming to Canada to die. I don't think the Trudeau government likes that kind of information being public. I don't think the Trudeau government wants that to be out there in terms of Canada and its tourism industry. Right. So I think there's a concerted attempt to hide these numbers.
I can imagine flying into Toronto or Ottawa at the airport, and normally you see all the flashy billboards for the things that you're going to do in that town that day. You're going to go visit this building, this historic church. You're going to go all see. Instead, Canada can have billboards that, well, you're here. You might as well pick out your coffins while you're here, because that's part of their tourism industry. Essentially, is people are flying in to be medically assisted in death. What I'm struck by, have they gotten back to you? Have you managed to get any kind of a response from them on this? Are these numbers? Is it going forward that they're going to start to fudge these numbers, or historically this has always been the case? They've been fudging these numbers. Has anyone responded or given you any indication that they plan to answer your question on this?
No, they have not. I've got a query in, and I will be expecting an answer on this. But certainly it's an outrage. And what really should concern anybody is that by doing this, they are replicating the behavior of Nazi Germany. Because Nazi Germany had an extensive euthanasia program for anybody unfortunate enough not to be perfect. And if you had any kind of physical deformity or mental incapacity in your family that was genetic, you were eligible for Nazi Germany's euthanasia program. Step right up, and they would take you away in the night. But they reported those deaths as anything but euthanasia. Common cold, influenza, pneumonia, cancer, all of those deaths were attributed to something else. And that to me is absolutely frightening, that we have a Canadian government that is directly lying about why people are dying. And it's the opposite extreme of what they did during COVID. During COVID, everything was COVID.
Right. I was just going to say,
and died.
Yeah. I was going to say, because you could be in a car accident and a violent car accident and die. But if you had COVID, it was death because of COVID. I mean, that's literally how they were marking things. So this is a stunning kind of turn and moving away from, well, we're giving them a shot and we're killing them, but they're dying. They've actually died because of cancer. Or, well, we now know in Canada, you can sign up for the MAID program if you're mentally depressed. So can you now, I guess now technically under this fudging of the numbers, you could die from being medically depressed or medically anxious. So anxiety will now become a cause of death in Canada, or depression will now become a cause of death in Canada?
Well, that's precisely what could happen when you lie about why people are dying. This is a horrible program, and there's no way to gloss it or sugarcoat it. It's about killing people. Yes, they might want to at the moment, or you can say they want to. I don't know how we're going to do that with mentally ill patients, how we can possibly prove that. But it's about people being assisted in dying, in committing suicide. It's not about them dying of cancer. That's really why they're dying.
So tell us about Allison in Canada. This is an amazing story, and it's part of this medical assistance in death, the MAID program story. She had cancer, abdominal cancer, in British Columbia. And, well, you walk us through what happened to Allison.
It's a fascinating story, and I'm happy to say that there is a happy ending to the story. Not thanks to Canada, though, but it's Alison Ducluso from Victoria, BC, and that's on the far west coast of Canada. And she was diagnosed with abdominal cancer only because she wound up in emergency one night. Because as far as the doctors were concerned, she really couldn't see a doctor. So she ended up in emergency because she collapsed. Then they said, well, the reason you collapsed is you have fairly well advanced abdominal cancer. Subsequent examinations revealed it was stage 4 cancer. She had from 2 months to 2 years, probably a lot less than that, to live. So while she was desperately trying to get treatment in Canada, to get an operation, because she needed help immediately, what did they offer her? Not assistance through the British Columbia Cancer Agency. They said, well, you know what's available, Allison? The Medical Assistance in Dying program. If it's just too much for you, we'll offer you suicide. And she mentions this in an aside, like, I went to get help and they offered me MAID instead. And it's just, she's aware of the irony. She's aware of how horrible this is. How can they do that? And yet the publicly funded healthcare system in Canada, Medicare, the socialized medicine program that Justin Trudeau is always bragging about, that a lot of American politicians are bragging about. Bernie Sanders loves to brag about socialized medicine in Canada. It completely failed her because it could not save her life. She would have been on a waiting list probably for years. She had to go to the United States to get the cancer removed, to have the life-saving operation, because Medicare failed her. All they could offer her was suicide, not life. Thank God she's well today. But my God, she's a critic of Canadian Medicare because she's saying there's something horrible about this system.
Yeah, I guess socialized medicine in Canada is not all it's cracked up to be. And maybe United States politicians should pay attention to that. Well, I'm glad that she did not take them up on their offer at the MAID program. And I'm glad America could do something great and prove that its medical system can stand and shine like a beacon of hope at some stages and help people. That's
well, I
great.
mentioned Bernie Sanders, Clayton. He had a life-saving operation some years back, emergency heart surgery. I don't know if you recall that. He was running for a presidential nomination. I wrote an article at the time for the Daily Caller, where I was the Canadian bureau chief, and I said Bernie would have died in Canada because the waiting list for that kind of operation is 6 to 8 weeks. He didn't have time to wait. And here's Bernie always praising Canada's Medicare system as being just so wonderful. It would have failed Bernie Sanders because 65,000 Canadians every year leave Canada for the United States to get health care, to get life-saving operations. Allison's not alone, 65,000. And Canadians pay $12,000 a year minimum in their taxes to pay for their so-called free Medicare in Canada. There's nothing free about it. It's cheaper to get private insurance than it is to pay for because the richer you are in Canada, the more you're paying for your Medicare and taxes. So it's not free and it doesn't work.
Interesting. I didn't know any of that. That's fascinating. Wow. That's an unbelievable statistic, and one that, of course, they don't want you to know about. The Trudeau government doesn't want you to know about it. Absolutely. No wonder they want to fudge these numbers and hide everything. David Creighton, great to see you. Great reporting on this story. Fascinating. Glad to hear that Allison is okay. And keep us posted on these fudging numbers and what you uncover, because I think this is just the beginning of the onion to be peeled here. So thanks, David. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Clayton.
Thanks so much, David. And thanks to all of you for tuning in tonight. Many of you were very kind and sent lovely messages about, yes, our new Redacted store has now been added to the bottom of our YouTube channel page. If you're on the main homepage of our Redacted News, if you just go to youtube.com/redacted news, you'll see now the store is integrated right there. So it makes it much easier to explore the shirts and t-shirts and mugs and everything that we have right now. We wanted to get that up and running in time for the holidays. But if you're not on YouTube and you don't want to just go through their storefront access, you can just go to redactedstore.com. We have our own website. So if you'd like to support independent journalism and what we do here, you can pick up a hat, a mug. You can see our friends don't let friends friends don't let their friends watch mainstream media. We've got our do not comply shirts and hoodies as well. All of it. Check it out, and you can support independent journalism. We don't mark the prices up at all. We keep them very close to cost of printing. So very, very, very cheap for the holidays here. So anyway, go to redactedstore.com. We're going to keep those prices cheap through the holidays. And you can get access to all of that. Give a gift. Give the gift of journalism, if you'd like. Again, redactedstore.com. Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. We'll be back here tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. We hope you have a great night, everyone.